Well, hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully the few remaining people out in the back will start coming in, so thank you so much. My name is John Shaw. I'm the director of the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute and would like to welcome you here for a special event. Special thanks to the leader of the House Republican Party, Tony McCombie, who drove 6 hours from another part of Illinois to be here and has been very gracious with her time. And she and I have been emailing for about a year to try to pull this together. So we hung in there and things came into place. Let me just tell you a little bit about the leader, and then I might say for format, after a brief introduction, the leader is going to come up and make some opening remarks. She and I are then going to converse for about 15-20 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. So hope to have a good discussion. And first of all, thanks for the Tony's colleagues who've come to support her. Everyone maybe would stand up, her colleagues from the Illinois General Assembly. Well, Leader McCombie is a native of Savannah, Illinois, and graduated with an undergraduate degree from Western Illinois University. She served on the City Council of Savannah and also as her community's mayor. She was first elected to the Illinois General Assembly in 2016, and then in 2020 led the campaign arm of the House Republican Party, and then in November of 2022 was elected House Republican leader, starting to serve in January of 2023. She's the first woman to head the House Republican caucus and has obviously risen through the ranks really quickly. She's from the western part of the state, northwestern, the 89th Illinois House District, which includes parts or all of Carroll, DeKalb, Joe Davies, Ogle, Stevenson, and Winnebago counties. She's also a small businesswoman. She owns and operates a company called Blue Appraisals and is a real estate broker for Mel Foster Company. So we're really eager to, first of all, we're very grateful that she made the great effort to come here. And we're eager to hear just a little bit about her backstory and her agenda, the agenda of the House Republicans, and then maybe a little preview of the November elections and what sort of issues she thinks is likely to animate the fall campaign. So with that, I'll have the leader come forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? This is not a, okay. Thank you so much for coming this evening. I appreciate that. So if you're in the back row, you have to come to the front row. Everybody has to move up. I'm kidding. It's just everybody's always so scared of the front row. I always find that interesting. Thank you so much for working to make this and sticking with me and being patient, because he's not kidding, and it's actually probably been a year and a half. So he's being very kind to me and saying a year. But this is a very big state, and that's one of the things that I have discovered as becoming the leader of the House is, you know, when we have 40 members out of 118 in the Republican side of the aisle, we represent parts of all 102 counties. So we have to represent all parts of that, and the way to do that is to show up. So I've been in Southern Illinois on several different occasions, but I have not been to this campus, so I'm very glad to certainly be here. You know, we're going to talk a lot about politics, I think, or at least a little bit, 15-20 minutes of it, but we have a lot of negativity right now in politics, so you find a lot of people are turned off. And I think that's a big reason that a lot of people don't vote and are not engaged, is because of that negativity. And that's something that we have to try to figure out and how we have to overcome that. The doubt in government is really very damaging for government. The lack of people being engaged is a detriment to all parties. And whether you are Republican or Democrat, it's up to us to be part of the process. And so one of the things that our caucus tries really hard to do is to help bring that public trust back with government. And one of our pieces of our agenda is to really shrink the size of government and also to make government more efficient. So the government is working for the people and not the other way around. And I think it really does start with conversation, whether it's in a forum like this, whether it's in a committee or on the House floor in debate, or whether it's at doors. I was walking for a candidate just yesterday in O'Fallon, and really finding what's important to people. And with me not being in the district, it was really interesting. I feel like sometimes when I'm walking outside of my home area, people are more comfortable having conversations with somebody that they don't know, who's not part of their community. So it's very interesting in this position to walk doors for candidates, and we're all doing that because one of the goals and one of the agendas of the Illinois House Republicans is to bring balance to Illinois, and that is to have more of us elected. 40 out of 118, regardless of politics, being that upside down really makes it very difficult for us to have good conversations under the dome. I never in a million years thought I was going to get involved in politics, and really just started as a small business owner on Main Street in Savannah, and I wanted to put a sandwich board on the sidewalk, and the city council told me no. And so what do? You join the city council and you change the ordinance, and that's what I did. And while I was there, there was a vote I disagreed with, or a change of a vote. There was a vote one way in committee. By the time it got to city council that evening, they changed their minds. And so then I decided to run for mayor, because that's what you do. And at that time, we had a Democrat in office, and I said to him, he was from the Quad Cities, I said, don't forget Savannah, Illinois. I know we're your smallest voter pool, but at one time we had a Savannah Army Depot, we had a hospital, we had a thriving Main Street like many small communities around the state, and I said, don't forget us. And he did. So when I was approached to run, I said to my husband, honey, I think I'm considering running for office for the state rep. And he said, is this where I remind you when you asked me if I run for mayor again, you said, don't let me run for mayor again? I said, I'm not running for mayor, I'm running for state rep. So it really is interesting that I never was political. And now here I am, not only at one time running the House Republican organization, but now here I am the leader of the Republicans, thankfully for my colleagues here, Representative Freeze and Windhorse and Jacobs. You're all very blessed here in Southern Illinois to have such great folks representing you. I think it's really hard for us to as a whole, to talk about bipartisanship when things are upside down too. And we really do strive to do that. But unfortunately, when we are in the minority, it's difficult. One of the rules that the speaker has is the rule of 60. So if there's any piece of legislation that is coming forward, it has to be 60 Democrats. You only need 60 to pass. So what does that mean? That means we don't have to be involved in any conversation with any organization, any advocacy groups, any voter, because we're not a part of that original 60. And that's really a disservice, and it makes it hard for organizations to have bipartisan conversation. It's hard to have bipartisan passage of bills, and that's where we're at today. But my goal and our goal as a team is to change that, and it's going to be small changes over the next 10 years so we can have a better map. We have by far the most gerrymandered partisan map in the nation. And as a matter of fact, Congresswoman Bazinski, I always say her name incorrectly, her district alone was voted to be the most gerrymandered in the nation, and that's right here in our state. So we have a lot of work to do. The House Republicans will continue to advocate for common sense laws. We advocate for solutions. You know, we always hear about we're the party of no, and our caucus over this last General Assembly has tried really hard to have working groups and have ideas and solutions to come forward. We don't want to be the party of no. We want to be a part of the checks and balance, but we also want to have an avenue for hopefully our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. If they need a solution, we're more than willing to give them that solution and hope they take that forward and let us be a part of that legislation. So I look forward to the discussion, and thank you again for having me.
Well, Tony, let's begin. When you were a student at Western Illinois University, what were you thinking about professionally? I know you launched your career as a small businesswoman. You've done various things. I think you were saying a bed and breakfast, an appraisal company, real estate. So when you were in college and working your way through, what were you thinking about your life in the professional sense?
Well, I get bored very easy, I think probably like a lot of women, so I was going to be a teacher. That's what I thought I was going to do, and have the summers off and have my kids and raise my family and live the American dream. And then I was like, well, maybe I'm not going to do that. So I actually just got my Bachelor of Arts in concentration in sociology and business, and from there I went into banking and insurance. Started out in banking because that was a job there. I come from a long line of folks that are in the food and beverage industry, also known as bars, third generation, and so we've always been workers. And so banking business I thought would be something I wanted to get into. The pay wasn't great. I've met my first employer since being the leader, and I told her why I left that particular bank. But went into insurance after that and missed a couple promotions, and that's how I got into, I opened a cafe and a bed and breakfast, and really I said to my mom that I was going to open up this business, and she said, no, you're not, and I said, yes, I am. She said, no, you're not. I said, yes, I am. She said, okay, and I said, good, because you're the cook. So it worked out.
Great. So talk a little bit about your time on both the city council and as mayor of Savannah. I mean, what were the sort of issues that you were dealing with? I mean, you mentioned a couple of the ordinances, but what were the sort of the main things, and how did that sort of shape your theory of how government should work?
Well, it's interesting. We did, and I'm not sure if Southern has this, but we had through WIU, they have through Rural Affairs, a mapping program. So they come into small communities and they do a study, and they pull a bunch of people together. And so I thought, well, we're, at the time, it's going to be infrastructure issues. Everybody wants to flush their toilet and turn on their water, and oh no, it was about parks. It was about quality of life. It was about how your town looked. It's about what you could do in your town. And that really was an eye-opener, because when you're in it, when you're in this field, in the city, you're always, my first term when I was mayor, it happened to be one of that winter when everything froze. I mean, everything froze. And of course, it was the city's fault. It had nothing to do with anything with the weather. So I thought it was aging infrastructure was going to be the big issue, and I learned very, very quickly it wasn't. Anything that could not be seen above ground was not important to most people. And also, when you're talking about raising tax levies or changing how things go, most people were not engaged. But if you wanted to talk about chickens or golf carts or the fire station, the place would pack. So it's really you had to determine in this position what's important to the people you serve. And it's not what you think it is.
Let's talk about your time in the General Assembly. And for many years, I was a congressional reporter in DC. And the one thing that always struck me is that some people kind of instinctively figured out how the system worked and others didn't. And they might be equally intelligent, but some maybe just had a little bit more of an instinct for how the system works and how to operate within it. So when you started in Springfield, I mean, what were your first impressions? What sort of issues did you gravitate towards, and what was your kind of initial read of Illinois politics?
Well, we have a great team in Springfield, and we have a really strong, I would say, a freshman orientation that we have. Really business organizations and different organizations that come in every week and tell us what they do and how they do it. We also have our staff talk to us about communication, the process, how to write a bill, and those different things. And plus we have our mentors, and everybody has a different idea. The diversity of the state and trying to understand all of the issues, because although we represent our own districts, we still have to vote on everybody's district as a state. And I think some of us have embraced that more than others. I think if you are in some sort of a city government or an elected official, Sometimes that's easier. I think lawyers also are able to grasp it better on some cases because they can understand the language. Certainly, they don't write it for us that are not lawyers. But it really is drinking from a fire hose and what you think you're going to want to be involved in. For example, and I was telling your reporter earlier, is, right away there was a murder in my district of a DCFS worker. And because of that, I wanted to get involved in the criminal judicial committee. Never thought in a million years that I would be interested in criminal justice reform, but because of something that happens to you, you want to be part of it more. So my interest has changed over the years. The more you learn, I think, the more you can expand what you do. So this is new for me too as the leader. One of the most visits I get in my office deals with healthcare and Medicaid, and I had no idea about any of that. So you really are learning something new all of the time. And as every General Assembly goes, the longer you're in, it doesn't mean you're always going to get that same committee. So, or they ask or we ask for what we hope to get, but we don't always have that opportunity because of scheduling or the number of people we can have on a committee. So it is very interesting of the different things you can really sample and learn about.
So what is the difference, excuse me, between being a rank and file member and a leader? I mean, presumably the range of issues is broader, but probably you don't have as much chance to really kind of plunge into the really deep details until it becomes a major issue, or just kind of flesh out what is the difference between life as someone who's a regular legislator and someone who's a leader?
Well, I went from, there was no step for me. I went from just being rank and file to that. For me, it was the difference of thinking of the official side, the state side, having, I have a budget and a chief of staff and a team. I kind of think of it as a small city, right? That's how, I had a fire department and a police department and a public works department, and now I have a comms department, a research department. I have different groups, and so that's a piece. You're actually really the boss, you know what I'm saying? And trying to build that team and grow that team and support that team. And because the more they're supported, the more we're supported. And none of us could do our jobs without the staff. We are helped every day, whether we're in Springfield or not. But I think when you're a freshman, you're very, very, very busy. You get more committees. So you really are learning a lot of different things compared to and you're in a leadership role. You're then the chair, or the spokesperson for a committee. So you're going to have ideally less when you're in that third year position or third term position. But my leadership team, direct leadership team, is also very different as well. So there's kind of three different levels. You got your rank and file, you've got your spokesperson for committees, which is a form of leadership, and then the actual leadership of my team. And really I chose a team that was geographically around the state, but also I wanted a group of people that I knew would tell me no and that would challenge me. I might not agree or just continue on my happy way. But one of the things that is great about our team is that we do work really well together, and I have checks and balances too within my own caucus, and that's okay. And I think that's an important piece.
I know back in the day, actually, when maybe state government was more balanced, excuse me, the governor would have regular meetings with the four tops, they used to call them. How does it work now? I mean, do the four leaders meet with the governor monthly, any kind of regular schedule, or is it just nothing until the final push and then it just depends on whether they need your votes? I mean, talk about that. And also the speaker and how you interact with the speaker.
Well, I'll start with the four tops. We've had one four top meeting, and that was a couple days before the budget this year. And from my understanding, that's been the first time that that has happened. So the governor sat with the four of us and our chiefs of staffs and told us the differences that was going to be presented in the budget in the next couple days, different than what he had outlined in the budget address at the beginning of the year. And then would ask for our support. He reminded me, because I say it all the time, he said, "And leader, you represent parts, your caucus represents parts of all 102 counties, so I'd appreciate your support." And I said, "Well, Governor, I have some questions." We did not support the budget, but neither did all of the Democrats either. And I think because of how unbalanced we are, the ask for collaboration is not done as often as it should be and could be. Now, rank and file is very different, and we want that. We want bipartisan support on bills. One, it's just better, and two, we have to work together to get them on our committees. So some committee chairmen are much better on the Dem side than others, and want collaboration, and that's better government, and those are better bills. You know, I would say 85–90% of all of the legislation that comes forward is agreed upon, and you don't hear about any of it. But the ones that you do hear about are the bigger issues, especially tax increases. Speaker Welch and I, my first year, I don't want to say that I was naive, but maybe I was naive. It was a goal of mine to try to meet with him every week, and we did so until we didn't closer to the budget time. Which is unfortunate, because then that has stopped and we have not met. Now, we are fine and friendly. He beats me up in the media, I beat him up in the media, we shake hands and go on our merry way. But it really is unfortunate that that's where we're at right now, and until we have a good election, which I hope we're going to have one this year, at least one where we show that we are gaining some seats. We're not going to get out of the super majority anytime soon, but just to show that there is a need and a want and a desire for change, then I think we'll see that collaboration from the top down, because we do see it on the rank and file.
Right. When we have events with state reps, I mean, the thing they always say is that there's a lot more cooperation going on in the kind of second and third tier issues than people ever realize, but it's the top tier issues, budget, taxes, and criminal justice, that there is a more partisan divide.
And I would even argue that I believe that rank and file, if you kept the leaders out of it, they would have a better budget, they would have better criminal justice reform, they would have better overall policy if they weren't worried about the politics of it.
Let's talk about Illinois politics for a second. And excuse me, we had an event a couple of weeks ago in Chicago, and the title was "Why a Swing State Stopped Swinging." And we sort of examined, back in the day, Illinois was a very competitive two-party state. In the last 10 or 15 years, that has shifted. But, we actually had a kind of a discussion about, is Illinois, 55-45 blue, or is it 58-42 or 58 or 52-48? I mean, and I know when we were talking offline, you were saying that in terms of overall votes in the General Assembly, I mean, the numbers are surprising. So, but when you look at just sort of the Republican position in the state, in terms of, your caucus and the caucus in the Senate and the congressional district and so forth, in our discussion, there were sort of four factors that were discussed. One were just the demographics of Illinois and how it shifted, how the parties have shifted, how the issues have changed, and then also the maps. And I know the maps are something that you talk about a lot and you think are pretty central to the polarization in Illinois. Pick up just that issue and then more broadly about how Republicans can become more competitive in Illinois.
Well, absolutely. I think it was in 2018, we talked about this. At the time, State Representative Terry Bryant, now Senator Terry Bryant, and myself and a couple other colleagues actually studied how we lost the seats that we lost there. And then you really saw a shift in politics in Southern Illinois in the suburbs. You started seeing that change, when you had the Jerry Costello and the Brandon Phelps Democrats in Southern Illinois representing, voting very similar to Republicans in the North. Or you could say the Republicans in the North were voting very similar to the Democrats in the South. Very, I would say, common sense, middle of the ground voting records. And you started to see that shift. And I think on top of that change, I think people I know people in rural areas are tired. We've lost industry. We feel we've lost representation because of bigger metropolitan areas. And Illinois is not alone in that thought. That happens a lot when you have urban and rural areas. But I would say the state as a whole is probably very close to 50-50. We have elected Republican governors. We will elect Republican governors again. We certainly have had more representatives, Republican representatives. We had the House control for one cycle in '95, and I think that was the start of the map situation. I think Speaker Madigan decided that he didn't like being in the minority. He didn't like having to move out of his office and actually never moved back to that office. That was the start of when you started seeing more one-party control, and you saw it with this map especially. The previous speaker would never have drawn a map to win 77, 78 seats, because it really is not healthy for their caucus or our caucus. It's not healthy for the state as a whole. This last cycle, you saw 70,000 more votes for House Republican representatives than you did Democrats. But Democrats have 2/3 of the seats in all the constitutional offices. That's because of the map. No ifs, ands, buts about it.
So given your role, what is the role of the House Republican Caucus? Do you think your primary role is to criticize the majority agenda, to propose an alternative agenda, to trying to find areas of compromise? And maybe it varies from issue to issue as to whether there's some areas of common ground. But I know that in several of your speeches, the point you make is we are not just a party of no. We want to govern. Give us a chance to come to the table, and we will govern with you.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and I think I've changed a little bit. I think I might be a little spicier this coming General Assembly if my colleagues choose me, because I'm not going to beg to sit at anybody's table. Anybody's welcome to sit at my table and eat a meal with me and visit with me and govern with me, as well as anybody in my caucus. They have the same feeling as I do. But at some point, we're just not going to beg. And that's the other piece where people are tired. Because like I said, we represent those people. We represent parts of Cook County. I go to Cook County. I went to Edgar Fellows, and Democrats asked the question, my voice doesn't matter here. He's a Democrat, and he's served by Democrats. Because the party is going to put forward who they want, and that's who that's going to be. So they feel the same in areas when it's one party rule. Our job as the House Republican Caucus is to hold the other party accountable. We are the checks and the balance. And it's important for us to do that. It's important for us to ask questions on the record, whether it's in committee or whether it's on the floor, so that the public knows what's happening. It's important for us around the state to talk about what is happening. So many people have no idea what is going on in Springfield, and I think this General Assembly and this caucus has done better, because I think we don't want to be in this position, and the only way we're not going to be in this position is to let people know. We are polling all over the state right now. We did a modeling project, and we're polling all over the state. And one of the questions we ask, and I'm sure the Democrats ask the same question, is, do you feel the state is on the right track or the wrong track? We haven't found any district yet that they think we're on the right track. And that's a real problem. That's a very big problem. So our job is to help since we're in the minority, is to help our colleagues on the other side get it to the right track. But if they're not, then we're just going to take over and we're going to win those seats and we're going to put it on the right track. And that's what we're going to do. And that's what I have to do, is to help my colleagues help other colleagues get elected.
Let's talk about the issues this fall in particular. And at the event that I mentioned, we had Ray LaHood speak. And one of the points, I mean, one of the questions was posed to Ray, how can Republicans become more competitive in Illinois? And one of his views, he said, we need to be speaking much more about economic issues and much less about cultural issues. Respond to that if you would, or just even more broadly, when you go around the state, what are Illinoisans asking you? What solutions are they looking to have confronted and put together?
That's another thing that I will say with modeling and with polling around the state, whether you are in Northwest Illinois, the suburbs, Central Illinois, parts of Cook County, or even here in Metro East or in the Champaign area, the top issue is the cost of living and inflation. The other one is job security. So the top three things typically are around our economy, and then immigration, and then you'll have abortion after that, in that order.
Let's talk a little bit about higher education. And it's obviously a big issue in Carbondale, and I know you're from McCombie. And I saw one interview or speech you gave in which you had said that you were talking actually about K through 12, and you had said the sort of evidence-based model had not quite done what you had hoped it would do, and that you were afraid that a kind of iteration of that might be moved to higher education, which also would cause problems. So speak more broadly about just the education challenge, and then particularly, higher education for communities like Carbondale and McCombie as they struggle with enrollments, student debt, university debt, just the challenge of higher education in Illinois.
Yeah, and this is where I will give kudos to the governor and his administration, is his pre-K initiatives. I think it's an extremely important piece, and for us in government, we should be spending certainly on education, public safety, our most vulnerable. So we have to take care of our kids first, and I think that's a good start with our pre-K. K through 12, the evidence-based funding model, that was the bill right when I got in. So really was, fish out of the water. I had no idea. But there was some last minute changes to that. And also it was supposed to be a fix. I believe it was, I don't remember now, I think a 10, 15 year fix. I know we're recording this now, so don't hold me to it, but it was not a long-term, it was gonna be fixed. We're gonna put the 350 million every year in, and the budget, and that's been done. That promise has been kept, surprisingly. But it didn't change. When you have additional mandates and regulations being put on schools, when you have other things you have the cost of inflation going up, things are balancing out. And when we have people leaving schools and schools consolidating, and it just is not a formula that works, the evidence-based funding model. Now, is it better? And is communities like mine better than they used to be in comparison to having just a flat fee for every child, the money with the child? Yes, it is better, and our district is better for it, and I'm very appreciative of that, and I know a lot of rural districts are. But when you're always throwing money at a problem, it doesn't always fix it. And with the evidence-based funding model for higher ed, that is going to be very different. It's not going to be about need. And there is a Senate bill that has been presented, and I'm very concerned about that because it's not going to be necessarily about economic need. So there's a lot of conversation that has to come forward on that. The other piece of that is when you're throwing more money at an issue or at, let's say, a university, what's the catch? Is there going to be a decrease? Does that money come with an agreement that the university, whether it's this, Western, Northern, is there an agreement that you're going to decrease tuition? Probably not. right? And I'm not saying that negatively, but a lot of schools have deferred maintenance years and years and years. There's money that can always be spent on other things. But there is a real concern here in our state, and Leader Windhorst and I were just in an event today where mothers are talking about their children, and we all know somebody in this room that has kids that are going out of state to a different university because it's more affordable for them to do so. That's a real problem that we have to figure out, and we have to figure it out real fast, because those people are not moving back to Illinois, and they're raising their families in those states.
Okay. I'm going to have one more question to them and turn it over to the audience, so think of your own questions. But I know we have an election to hold in the coming months, but as you look ahead to the spring, I mean, what are likely to be the top issues in the spring legislative session? I mean, are there certain issues that you think are teed up for active discussion? What needs to be taken on first?
Well, I think we're definitely going to have some budget concerns and constraints, especially dealing with the immigration situation, with Illinois being a sanctuary state. We are spending $1 billion on housing, education, and health care for non-citizens and illegal immigrants in the state of Illinois. That is something that is not sustainable for the state. So we're going to have to address that for sure. We have our ideas, and I hope that they will listen to those ideas. The other thing, we're hearing that there is going to be a lot of environmentalist bills. I don't know what that entails, but that can be frightening because we're already having a lot of energy issues and concerns, especially with zero carbon initiatives by 2030, when that's really unrealistic, when here we are having all these builds for electric vehicle plants or battery plants or building these manufacturing settings. They take a lot of energy to build. And when we're looking at shutting down completely coal and natural gas, that doesn't make sense. So there's going to be some real environmental bills I think will have to be tackled. But also I think there will be some sort of education, higher education funding concerns, and a tier 2 pension fix will have to come through, I would guess, because we're getting real close to that time where people will start having to dig into that.
Let me turn to the audience and have some questions from you as to what you're thinking about or interested in. Michael?
Hi, John, and thank you for showing up here for the meeting. I have 2 structural questions maybe for you. This is my hometown. I did the census in 1980 for Carbondale as a worker, so I can remember the demographics of what the city and the state looked like. If you're going to change the funding for universities, can you change it, for lack of better words, outcome-oriented, based upon, for example, how many H-1B visas for technology or J-1 visas for medical staff that universities should be trying to produce enough graduates to fit all the job requirements that we see in the technical fields, that they have to allegedly go off and find a visa to bring someone in to meet those job requirements. The second one has to do with gerrymandering. Is there a constitutional amendment to the state constitution that can restructure gerrymandering so you have to be, let's say, wholly inclusive to the county, wholly inclusive to townships, so you can't start crossing county borders to extend the metropolitan reach for the gerrymandered districts? I don't know if you have any structural answers to education and then gerrymandering.
The structural side for the education, no, but I do know obviously a lot of different, I will say community college especially. I feel, at least in my area, which I have more community colleges, I mean I have some higher, Western and Northern, a little farther away, but they really try to have programs that are going to feed the hospitals or particular manufacturing. So if you have, that could have been really dangerous. You might want to scoot over one. I don't know that answer. For the constitutional amendment, There was a process, and we are strong believers in an independent map. Even California has an independent mapping process. But we're not the only state. This happens on Republican-leaning states too, that this happens. But that we had enough signatures for that, and that was under the charge of Speaker Madigan. And I will say that was struck down to be on the ballot, but we had plenty of signatures to actually put that on a ballot. And will there be another initiative for that? I would say watch for it.
Great. Other questions?
I won't need a mic, but just I want to underscore the point that you made about working together, and the saying that most of these issues, especially like let's just take healthcare, but just about every issue, transcends politics. Mm-hmm. And one example that I'd like to give in healthcare is that, especially with the delegation that we have here, when we were experiencing problems with the Illinois Department of Public Rules and Regulations, with the licensing for nurses, doctors, and so on, and the badge law, your team and our team here really stepped up to the plate and had a major influence in pushing that initiative forward and doing something about that. And it was extremely helpful. I want to thank you personally for the access to your office and to your leadership. It's very important. As far as when you mentioned the challenges in rural America or rural Illinois, yes, we have those challenges here from the standpoint of recruiting, things of that nature, and Medicaid reimbursements. And it has been very important and very helpful that as a team, and team stands for together, everyone accomplishes more, right? And your members have been very helpful to us in the healthcare industry here on the Medicaid working group. Mm-hmm. And that I know that group meets on a regular basis, and many decisions are made and then suggested to the General Assembly from that group. And so I encourage you and all the members to continue to work together. That seems to be one area that both parties can work together on. Mm-hmm. And come up with solutions. So I want to underscore what you're saying about everyone working together, and that's important. I have the saying that some of my friends are Democrats and some of my friends are Republicans, and I always agree with my friends.
Yeah, that's good. And I'll just say on the Medicaid working group, so this is one of the only working groups that actually work together. It's probably too big of a working group now. I think there's about 19 members on this group, but they get up every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m., which is really hard to do in Springfield. And they do discuss the issues. It almost fell apart year before last. It started getting very partisan. And because of that, we actually didn't vote on that bill. And that was too bad, but I think this year they repaired that. And I hope it does continue, because you're right, when we work together, it is better legislation. Our caucus is very blessed. We have lawyers, teachers, doctors, we have moms, we got business owners. We have a very diverse group, and we're really smart and have a lot of ideas. They don't have to take our bills, but to have a conversation, we don't care. We can get on as a co-sponsor. We can vote yes on any bill. And sometimes you do find that in the rank and file, and people will ask our opinion. it does happen. But when it's not encouraged by leadership, that's where it becomes a real problem, especially for the young upcoming folks that are coming in, because if this is how they start their freshman year, and they are going to be here for a few terms, that could also change how their caucus looks, 2, 3, 4 cycles.
Other questions?
I thought I saw somebody over there too.
I was just going to ask, do you know what the discussion is on the immigrants? Because the thing that we're feeling like a sanctuary state. These people, I'm sure they'd like to work and integrate their lives into the United States. What is the plan? How do you help these people do something? Give them reason to earn their citizenship or, what we're doing.
Yeah, I think to talk about the federal immigration process would be a good start, and wish we would have started years ago, right? To have somebody to come through on a legal process is really cumbersome and very expensive and very hard to do. And that's a problem in itself. So I think you could start there. I think securing the border today, really securing the border, is what needs to start for that. When you talk about sanctuary states, and I hear some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle saying, oh, it's just political, they're just dropping folks off in New York and in California and in Illinois. Well, that's because we're sanctuary states. They're not dropping them off in other states because they won't be treated like citizens. For the working piece of it, from my understanding, and don't quote me on this, is that something came through the federal government, but it is a long process, and it could take anywhere from 6 to 18 months, is my understanding. So it's nothing that is immediate or is going to happen anytime soon. I went to the border last year and saw firsthand, but then also went into Chicago and went with former Congresswoman Flores and spoke to a lot of those folks, and they really were just waiting, really with no intent of work. Many of them were from Venezuela that we spoke with, and they were waiting for their grocery card, is what they called it. So I'm a McCombie, so my name's M, and so I get to maybe go grocery shopping on Tuesdays. And she said, well, that's not how that works here. You have to work to get your groceries. And it's just they think they're gonna they've been sold a bill of goods in some cases. In some cases, they are trying to come here legally, and they are trying to have a better life, but in some cases, it's not the case. But we have to first secure the border. It's gonna be a long haul, and until we can get some balance in Illinois, I think it's gonna be very costly for taxpayers.
Minnie, did you have a question?
Were you mentored by anyone as a freshman, and is that kind of part of bringing new representatives into the system?
Yes, my mentor was my seatmate, Noreen Hammond, who is my deputy leader. And I would say even on the Dem side, I often would speak to Jerry Costello on the other side, and Fred Crespo. So I had folks, and Chad Hayes, who was from the Danville, Champaign area, was also one of my mentors as well. So yeah, we tried to do that.
Hello. My wife and I have wintered within 10 miles of the Rio Grande River for 20 plus years, for 5 months a year. Yes, there are lots of folks coming across the border. They wade, crawl, this, that, the other. And in Arizona, Mexico, there's 1,000 miles of open mail. Yes, not everybody comes with an understanding of how to do things in this country. My concern is, I don't see the federal government now contending of biting the bullet that this country is the attraction. These people didn't leave, they didn't walk through 1,000 miles, 500 miles of Mexico just to come have a free meal. They tried to come for a better life. I would like to see all of us figure out how to accommodate them. Make it not such a crime to talk about trying to work and move forward. If you think we're going to close the border, I got bad news for you. You ain't ever going to get there. period.
Well, let me clarify. If I said close, I pardon myself. I think I said secure. That's a difference in my opinion, and I think there is from my understanding of being there and talking to folks, that there is a path and a way, but there also are people that are being used and are taking that travel, and I don't think any woman or child should be used, abused, or raped. I'm not saying it's the norm, but it is happening, sir. And it happens to one person, and that is a bad thing. We went to a Catholic charity, and many of these women were there with their children alone, and some of them were very rough and had a very hard time getting there. They took that abuse the whole way, one of which took that abuse so her daughter wouldn't, and that was her payment. That's not the way to come to America.
I don't disagree with you.
So there is a better way. There is some real federal issues. I want people to come to America, and I don't know the federal answers. We have a Tyson's in my old district, and very few of them are American citizens that work there. And they're all working there legally, and thank God for it, because you ever have a chance to tour a plant like that, you'll be very thankful that these folks are here working in our country, really truthfully. So we have a lot of agriculture in our state. It's the #1 driver, economic driver in our state. And there's not almost any farm in my community that is big anyways, that doesn't have federal workers there every season. They're legally working and who have their families here. There is a path, but what is happening right now, and I would say the same thing regardless who the president was, I don't care about that. But this is a drain now on, we as Illinoisans shouldn't have to be spending $1 billion putting these folks before our veterans, our homeless, or our most vulnerable. That should not be happening. It should not. In my opinion, sir.
Why are you a Republican?
Why am I a Republican? I'm a Republican because I believe in less government. In less government.
Gentlemen.
If I can follow up on that statement you just made, like you, I served as a city council member and mayor, and doing a budget and weighing priorities and all that is difficult, especially, especially when you get people who show up and say, well, the budget's just too big and just cut it, without giving any thought to very precisely going through the budget line by line, program by program, and determining what are you going to cut and what are the impacts of that going to be. So is there a process that you and your team are following to try to lay out an alternate budget for the state that goes through every program, every line item, and says, this is what we're going to fund, this is what we're going to cut, and so on? To me, it's a practical kind of issue.
Yeah, and it's easier said than done on a state level. I had certainly had that thought when I first started as well. The GRF fund when I first started was $36 billion, and 8 years later it's $53.1 billion. The part with being in the minority is each agency provides their budgets. Those agencies aren't going to provide us with those budgets. So it's really hard for us to dig in until we see that. Now, we have an idea right away with the budget address of what the priorities of the governors is going to be, regardless of who the governor is. And oftentimes, several of those things we can try to figure out, and we're like, okay, he says he's going to pay the pension, so we know what that payment's going to be. He says he's going to fully fund the evidence-based funding model, so we know what that's going to be. He says some things, and those are typically what we consider shared priorities that we can all agree on. It's the new programs that we have to be aware of and careful of. And one of his new, I would say, is the pre-K, right? This is something which is, okay, how are we gonna fund that, another new program, and have it be sustainable? Because there's nothing worse than having a new program, especially something that serves a really needed population of people, like our kids, right? To start them out right into our system. How do we keep that sustainable so it doesn't start and then goes away? So that becomes the issue when you start new programs. We don't really have, we can go through the budget. This year's budget bill was 4 different bills because there was some borrowing and then the actual implementation of the bill. It would be great if it looked like a city budget. We don't have the levies, you know, or the maxes that we can do there. It's very different. And actually, quite honestly, I don't know what the percentage, but it's certainly 80 to 90% that we have to, by court decree, pay. So there's that piece too. So I wish we could, and we actually have a member in the House that says we should write our own budget. Well, our head of budgeting said, well, that would be great if the agencies are all willing to give us, as the minority party, the governor's administration, the budgets for theirs, but we don't get that. And that's where really the collaboration should be coming in earlier than the week before the budget or a couple days before the budget vote. And that's where we really have a hard time with budget conversations. Even if we started beginning of May, that would be helpful. We do have appropriation committees though, and some are better than others, where you can discuss some line items and look at line items. But from my understanding, those are also run very differently than they used to be. They used to be more detailed and strict. They get canceled a lot.
Tony's going to have to drive back to Springfield tonight, so we will not go much longer. But let me ask you this kind of broadly. What is the best part of your job? What part do you like the most? What part is the most challenging or frustrating?
Well, I think really, quite honestly, it's an honor to serve my home community first. And like I said, I never in a million years thought I would do this, but to be the House Republican leader and to serve with some of the best people in the state is just really an honor, and to learn about their districts and how we can try to serve everybody in the best we can. One of the things is when we're out and about doing traveling business hours or town halls, it doesn't matter what your politics are. It doesn't even matter if you're a taxpayer. We're there to serve you. We're there to help you get your teaching license. We're there to help you get your FOID card. We're there to help you navigate what you need for your livelihood. And that's really been a fun part to work with my caucus and in a more, I would say, intimate way to learn more about the state, because it is really, I mean, y'all even farm different down here than we do up north, so it's very different.
Well, I'm going to allow you to close with a Chamber of Commerce type of question, which is, you know, we have fall approaching, and if someone says, man, I've always wanted to go to northwestern Illinois and spend a good fall weekend, where should they go? What are some of your favorite spots in your part of the world?
Well, I'm very blessed. Being in Northwest Illinois, we are in Savannah. Savannah is the last community right there in the driftless zone. So we've got beautiful cliffs and overlook the river. It's really gorgeous. But we do have Galena, Illinois, which is one of the most visited parts of the state, a beautiful historic community. But we have a lot of, we've got the Great River Route. We've got, from Savannah, you can take my main street all the way to North Avenue into Chicago. So we have a lot of different ways. The fall's beautiful with the changing colors. We've got if you have a motorcycle, it is probably one of the best places to come and stay and ride your motorcycle. And it's just a really wonderful place. So you're welcome to come and spend your sales tax money anytime you'd like.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Tony.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you.